Okay, so we left off and we edited our grass geometry here to give us a little more land to set a few more trees on. Since this object, we're going to use this same Forest Pro object. So right now I've got, in fact, I'll tell you what, on this side of the street I want, instead of a clump of trees, I want 6 or 8 trees, same distance from the curve going up. So what I'm going to do is, instead of adding this onto this same object, I'm going to go ahead and clone this object. So the forest tree object is selected. I'm going to Control V and copy it. I don't want an instance because that'll relate it to the first one. So I'm going to do a copy. Now it's going to take a second. It's doing its thing, but it's obviously a duplicate over the old object. So what we want to do is change the parameters so it's not. So in this case, we're going to go into the tree editor. And again, right now our trees are defined based on a distribution map. We want to just put them in here manually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into check custom edit. It's going to tell me that it's going to disable my distribution mode. That's fine. So now if I go to sub-object level, enable this, or I can simply click up here, I can actually go in and highlight all my trees. I'm going to go ahead and erase those because I don't want those. I already have trees there. So I erase them and you still see the original object. Now I want to go into, let's check my areas, make sure I want to delete that paint. Okay, areas aren't applicable now, so I was just checking that. But now I want to go in and I want to add objects. And this is telling me I'm going to get random objects. I've got 2 in there, so it's randomly going to decide which ones to do. Again, to do this, I want to go into my working view and I want to hit T because I want to see my materials but be in my top view. So I'm going to start adding these things. So I'm going to just click where I want trees, and it puts them on that surface. So in my mind, this will give me some reflections in the windows of something occurring across the street. Now, one issue I have is that one of these trees is directly in front of the camera. So I'm gonna check this add again, and for now I'm just gonna get rid of those trees. You can clip an object with the camera. You could probably move the camera to a different angle. I'm going to go ahead and move these trees around so they don't block the view. I can see these dots, which means I'm going to get a tree in my way. So if I'm in the sub-object level, I can select a tree and either move it, and I'll just shift these around. These will give me some interesting shadows in the foreground maybe, but I'm just going to get them out of my way for now. So again, you can see my ground when let me get out of this. Now I'm just have the object selected again. It made it trees 001. I'm actually going to fix the mapping on this grass. It's bothering me. That map was baked in, and when I stretch the points, it stretched the map. So I'm going to go down and just give it another UVW map, and we're good. So now the trees are not limited to visibility. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pause while I do a quick render to see the difference here. So there's the render with the trees added behind me. It looks like we see one or 2 trees. I think we want to see a little bit more in the back, so maybe what I'll do is go into my grass object. I've still got these nodes selected from the last time, and I'm going to actually give myself even more land back here. Now I'm going to select my first tree object and go to areas, and I'm going to do a new paint area. Select my brush. Now you can see my brush defaulted back to the default size, which is like 1'8". I want to go to 75 feet, and I'm going to add myself another tree line back here, which should take care of those reflections. The other thing I might want to do, we'll see how the render comes out. I probably won't. What I don't want to see is horizon light beneath these trees. I want to block that. In fact, I'm going to do both of those as well. I'll do that in the next step. Let's do a quick render and see how that improved it, if it did. So we re-rendered it, and you can see the reflection of the trees in the windows is better, although in looking at it, I think the reflections are overall too reflective. So I'm going to go find my glass material here, and I'm going to turn down the amount of reflected light. So it's still refracting it, it's still clear, but it's reflecting less. So it should look a little darker. Let's go ahead and just do a region render and just get our windows, since we don't need to render the whole thing again. Go ahead and do that. And I don't know if that even changed it. Maybe I didn't change it extreme enough. Let me stop that, open up my glass, have it reflect very little light. And we want to render some solid rocks here. Well, maybe the inside of that house being white is reflecting light around in there, so it's pretty bright in there, and we're seeing that versus it looking dark. If the walls were a darker color, I have a feeling it'd be way darker inside. So I'm going to leave this for now and stop worrying about it and move on to the next forest object, which would probably be, again, this happens to look okay. I see a grass field behind these trees, which is really part of the HDRI. What I tend to do is obscure that with bushes. There's two things I could do, actually. I'll show you the bush method. One method, I'll just demonstrate this real quick because it might be the way to go. If I select this grass object and go into my upper viewport and take the back of the land, give myself a soft selection, maybe make that 60 feet, say 50 feet, and actually drag that land down, it's gonna block that, and that's probably the easiest way to go about it. The other method I would use is to copy that tree object, but replace it with some bushes and put the bushes between the ground and the trees. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick... you know what? I'm going to skip the re-render until we do the next step, which would be adding, say, the bushes in the front garden. Bushes and flowers. So turn off my... I'm going to go back to my region render. Click it here again while I'm in this viewport and adjust it just to get the front area so I can do a quick render of the garden without taking too long. I want to make sure to get out of my land object here. Now here's my flower bed. I'm going to start with some bushes, and then I'm going to fill it in with some flowers, and then put some mulch on the ground, even though you'll barely see it from the angle we're doing. Maybe we'll change that angle to make it more obvious. So what I'm going to do is hit my Forest Pro. I'm going to just give it the generic object, hit this, yes. Now you can see it put two of those generic objects on my flower bed. So I'm going to go into Modify, I'm going to change this to Forest, Garden, Bushes, and I'm going to tell it, excuse me, I'm going to tell it to use, go into this default object with a library, and I'm going to use Bush 1, which also happens to be in the free library that EdoSofts gives you. So I use this one all the time still, though. So yeah, now I put a couple bushes there. Again, I'm going to go into Distribution Map. I'm going to go into a grid. And grid 2 gives me like a 45-degree angle. And I'm going to turn this down. If you go too quick on this slider, it's going to crash your program, so be careful. So I'm going to start with the bushes there for now. Obviously, I don't think I want all of these bushes. I can go in here and do areas by size, so to get rid of those. But I think that's fine. That's about the number of bushes I want. But what I am going to do is, while this is selected, I'm going to hit my 1 key on the keyboard. It's going to take me into the custom edit mode, which now it won't be dependent upon the distribution map. I'm going to say yes. It somehow put those back, which is fine. I can select them now and individually delete them, or I can move these things around. Now they'll stay on the object, on the surface. If you go off the surface, they're going to go up to 0. So you want to stay on the surface they're supposed to be on. And that gave me my 3 bushes. I want to get out of the editor by clicking up here. And I want to do my transforms on them. Give them some rotation, transform. And give them maybe scale. I want the bushes to look like they're all planted at the same time. So I'm going to go 95, autosave. I'm going to go from 95 to 105. And that's good enough for me. I guess I want some clumps of flowers around here. I want to go, and by the way, while this is still highlighted, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go ahead and change the subdivisions down to 0.01, which will make my renders not take as long. I want to go ahead and make a new forest object. This time I'm going to do custom edit. And this time I'm actually going to select my geometry before I start. So I bought this package, HT Flowers 1. It's awesome from, I'm sure if you Google it you'll find it, but I recommend these. These are all different colors of roses. I'm going to use this color. Looks like it could be something else. I'm not a botanist, so I just pick what looks nice. And then, again, I'm going to work in my top viewport by pressing T. I've got to go out to my 4 panes and press T to get into the top on here. It's a little quirky that way. And I'm going to put my first clump of flowers in here. Yes. Now, if I go back to perspective, it's at 0, 0. I haven't given it a surface yet. So I'm going to say modify, change this to say flowers, and I'm going to go into surface and add a surface, click my flower bed. It brought it down. I'm going to make sure it updates it. And again, I want these to grow straight up, so that's good. Now while that's still selected, I'm going to hit my 1 key, and that takes me into my tree editor panel. And I'm going to say add. Again, I'm going to go hit T over my viewport. Now I can just pop flowers in wherever I want. And I can unclick add and maybe shift these around to get them more even. That's good. Now I'm going to go in and give them some transforms. Again, my rotations, my sizes. Maybe I'll do 95 to 100 again. Go into my perspective and look here. Yeah, that gave me some flowers. The last thing I want to do is the mulch, which in the last couple versions of Forest Pro, they've made it really easy. So I'm going to go into Forest Pro. I want to say generate, but they have in the Forest library some free presets of lawns. I always use Common Grass Large. Make sure things are coming in using V-Ray. Import it, and all I got to do is click this grass. Say yes. It's bringing in a couple different pieces of geometry to make this, so click it a couple times. Now the grass is in there, but I've got to do a couple things to it. I'm going to go ahead and do a test render, and we'll start off the next video with that.